Welcome into a special edition, a special abbreviated Monday Elite 8 edition of the Unreasonable Odds podcast. I am Julian Edlow. Our guest we have had in the past, we actually had him on an interesting day that ties in very well with today. James Alberino. You can find him on Twitter at Spread Investor. James, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. That day that you're referring to wasn't as fun as this kind of conversation is going to be.
No.
It was not fun a couple months ago.
So we are, what's the date? It is March 29th, and we are starting the Elite 8 tonight. James came on with us on January 28th, and he gave out a play of Oregon State plus either 12 or 12 and a half, I think, against USC. They were in it the whole game. We got an awful beat on a three-pointer that missed that should have been a turnover because of a shot clock violation. And then an easy offensive rebound, I think, put back. USC wins by 13, covers. That is one of the last times that Oregon State failed to cover. And both of these teams actually now find themselves in the Elite 8 as two of three Pac-12 teams somehow in the Elite 8. It has been a wild ride since then, but just to stick with the Oregon State Beavers, who are our first game on Monday night against Houston, sitting right now on DK Sportsbook as 7.5 point dogs, plus 255 on the money line. Ever since that game, they have only failed to cover, three times. Mm-hmm. They are 17-4, I believe, against the spread as an underdog this season. They have covered, 13 of their last 14 games as underdogs, I believe. That goes back to February 11th against Arizona. Mm-hmm. Ridiculous run against the spread, but ridiculous run through the Pac-12 tournament as massive underdogs. And to get through, Tennessee, I know neither of us were high on and couldn't have pounced on that fast enough, but impressive wins over Oklahoma State, Loyola Chicago, both good teams. And here we are with Oregon State, the Beavers in the Elite 8 going against Houston. I know what side of this game you're going to be on, but before we break it down this game, just thoughts overall on this Oregon State run, what you've seen along the way.
Yeah, they're a classic team that it took a couple months for them to really come together. And that's the thing with college basketball. I mean, you see it even in the NBA too. It takes some teams longer to figure it out. College basketball especially, and then you throw in a COVID year where limited preseason training. But this is a team that they just have a little bit of everything. They have really good guard play. Lucas and Ethan Thompson like to play in the big spotlight. They've got a really good defense, very good head coach. And then they're big guys. Roman Silva, 7'1", who did a really good job on Krutwick the other day. Julian, he wasn't playing. He wasn't starting up until a couple of weeks ago, and his minutes were not big at all throughout the whole season. So that's impressive how he came along. But I think Wayne Tinkle, the head coach, he deserves a ton of credit because he's kept them so dialed in on this run. This is a team that has never experienced this type of success, and yet they're staying on track, not letting the emotions get to them. Yeah, they beat Cade Cunningham last week. They beat Tennessee. They beat big powerhouse schools on a national spotlight. You see a lot of underdog team, a lot of stories like that. They won't finish the job. This is a team that's still going right now.
Yeah, let's look back in December. This team lost 3 of 4 games to Washington State, Wyoming, Portland. Then they beat UTSA. Then they lost to Portland State. They lost some of those games as 16.5, 12.5 point favorites. Yeah. Now they have won, beat Oregon as 8.5 point dog. Colorado is an 8.5 point dog. Tennessee is an 8.5 point dog. Oklahoma State, that came down to 6. Loyola Chicago closed at 7, winning those all in a row. And here they are now against Houston, which is a new and tough matchup. The Tennessee one, I was very high on that play and just immediately wanted to take the 8.5 and play the money line. Oklahoma State and Loyola, I had to talk myself a little more into and kind of, I knew I wanted to bet them, but add to my play a little bit along the way as I became more confident in them. This Houston one is tough. So I took Oregon State at 8.5 as soon as it opened. I have them at plus 300 on the money line. At this point, let's just be real. We're all aboard the Beaver train here,
Absolutely.
and if they lose this game, you tip your hat and say, what a run. Thank you for it all. But I still think they have a great shot in this game against Houston. What do you see in this matchup?
Look, Houston's athleticism is going to be tough in this game.
Yep.
This is going to be a different test than Loyola because there's more size from Houston. Houston's forwards are a lot bigger. There's just a lot more athleticism than Loyola gave to them. What goes into Oregon State's favor is Houston's not a great shooting team. They struggled shooting versus Syracuse. They struggled shooting versus Rutgers. I did not think Rutgers was impressive, but I mean, the general consensus across the country, Rutgers wasn't impressive for the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. They weren't a very good team this year, and Houston struggled to put them away. Oregon State has the half-court defense where they can make this game more of the speed and more of the tempo that they want. Oregon State has to maximize possessions in this game. They have to play relatively slow. They have to mix up defenses on Houston the same way that they've been doing. But they do have everything to make this a very close game. Houston thrives on winning offensive rebounds. Oregon State's got the size, and they're a good rebounding team. So there's really not much of a worry there. It's what was tough with Oregon State. They didn't handle the spotlight great in the beginning of that game versus Loyola Chicago. They didn't come out the gate very strong. Gianni Hunt, who's their best guard off the bench, he was like a deer in headlights the first couple of minutes, but then they started getting to rhythm. That's what I love about this team too, is they don't rely on just one guy. Jared Lucas, who's been their guy, the point guard, he had a big shot to clinch the game the other day. He got 2 fouls in the first 3 minutes of the game last game, which one of them was complete ridiculous call. He essentially tickled the shooter's elbow on the first one that shouldn't have been called.
I mean, we don't have to get into the officiating in this tournament. That's a whole side story.
It's been pretty questionable. But when he went to the bench, that's when I got worried, because you need a guy like that. And the way that Oregon State responded, it shows you what type of team this is. So I think they have enough to keep this really close. I don't know if you took it with me, but I'm in on 11-1 for Oregon State to make it to the Final Four before the game versus Loyola. So I haven't made a move yet in terms of how I'm hedging this. I might get a little risky and wait till an in-game because I think I could get a better number if I do take Houston on the money line live. But yeah, this should be a great game down to the wire.
Yeah, totally agree. And just one last thought on it, like you're talking about the Houston athleticism, it's such a different game from Loyola. That's more of, a mental game, a grind game, and they figured it out. The Oklahoma State game stands out to me a little bit in terms of how they can compete in this game. It's not apples to apples, but a very athletic team with some size. It just gives me a little bit of encouragement that it could be that they can beat that type of opponent. But the run that Oregon State's on right now, we know why this has gone from 8.5 to 7.5. They're going to be competitive in this game, and for both of us, hopefully they win it, because that's where we're invested.
Yep.
Arkansas Baylor. This is a tougher game to get a feel on. I know that you don't have necessarily a strong play on this game. I don't have a very strong opinion outside of like the square opinion that, it's a good game. Arkansas is solid. I would be pretty surprised if Baylor lost this game.
Yeah.
The way that they are controlling games right now. This is a fantastic 3-point shooting team that just went 3 of 19 or whatever it was against Villanova and mopped them by double digits, won the second half by 19, whatever it was, to be able to get that done. They didn't even need to shoot well, and the ability to get to the rim when they were just kind of like, all right, these aren't going in, and those 3 guards just go, we'll get to the rim every time if we want to, and did. It makes it tough to imagine that they will lose a game to an Arkansas team that I have respect for, but that made it tight with Oral Roberts, had a shot to lose that game, made it tight with Texas Tech, had a shot in the air to lose that game as well. Came out slow against Colgate and then kind of found themselves. I cashed a Baylor Elite 8 ticket that I wrote up in one of my articles. I also have them plus 160 to go to the Final Four by winning this game. I have no reason to add anything to the points or do anything with the money line. I'm just going to let that ticket ride because I'm very confident in Baylor in this game. Do you see anything differently?
No, I think Baylor's the right side in this game, and I don't love 7.5, but I do think they can cover. They've been a little undervalued at the beginning of the tournament because they got off their COVID pause right before the tournament started. So the last thing that everyone saw was, oh, well, they struggled a little bit versus West Virginia, and yeah, okay, but what about the Sunday afternoon game when they blew out Texas Tech? Like they dominated Texas Tech. I don't think that many people watched that game. It was a Sunday afternoon. It was like mixed in with a busy schedule. It was right after a big Saturday night slate of games. So I think that kind of got tucked away and not many people saw how impressive Baylor was. But Arkansas has a habit of getting off to slow starts. So if you do that versus Baylor, Baylor's got the defense, Baylor's got the size. I'm hoping we get Baylor Gonzaga because that would be arguably the best game of the tournament.
For sure. And you look at the way that Baylor is going right now. I think it's just those few games, those non-covers going into tournament play. They were 2-5, it looks like, in those last 7 games against the spread. And they also didn't even cover against Hartford. Won that game by 24. I think that's just given us more value on Baylor as the tournament has gone on, and that's kind of what we're seeing here. Although it is a bigger number. We'll get to, I guess, we can talk about maybe a potential Baylor Gonzaga matchup before we go, but let's do the Tuesday games quickly. Gonzaga and USC. Now, Gonzaga has steamrolled everybody along the way. Creighton was about as good a matchup as I think Gonzaga could have had because Creighton's just going to play how Gonzaga plays, but not nearly as well. And you just see over the course of that game, the more possessions they are, the more the Zags are just going to open up that lead. And I don't know what Creighton can do. They have to completely change their game to have a chance in that game, and they weren't able to do that. This is going to be a different game. USC just dominated Kansas. USC just dominated Oregon. They're playing very well. They have the size to compete with Gonzaga. The Mobley brothers down low are going to be an issue, and that's what I think is the most interesting aspect of this game. USC is taking money. It has gone, when we started this podcast, it went from 9 to 8.5. I'll be honest with you. I understand that side of it. And that is if you're going to bet this game with the points, it's USC, but it terrifies me to go against Gonzaga at this stage in time. I think a lot of people are going to feel that way. And that's maybe why USC is the sharper side of this game. Let me know where you're at on the points here. And let me know if you think USC actually has a shot to win the game, even if you like them to cover.
I think USC is the right side in this game. I like them +9. Winning the game, different story, but I think they do have a shot. It's going to get interesting. Look, USC has the size to compete with Gonzaga. Evan Mobley is dominant inside. The way they beat Oregon last night, Oregon's a really good team. Oregon's extremely balanced. They dominate. Oregon didn't have a shot in that game last night. And now Gonzaga, look, I don't want to go against Gonzaga. Right. But I do think they're going to be put in a situation that they haven't been in a while. Creighton doesn't have size. Outside of Bishop, Creighton's a bunch of guards. Creighton can shoot, but that's not how you beat Gonzaga. Gonzaga, you need to be able to defend Gonzaga inside. You need to be able to show them length at the 3-point line. You need to, like Oregon last night was catching the ball behind the 3-point line. They were hesitating to shoot because how many tip shots, how many altered shots, how many times they went up for a shot they were going to take that ended up turning into a shot fake because, oh, wait, now I have a 6'11" guy coming and closing out on a shot at me. It's not a 6'5" guy. That's what's so different about USC and that the country, for the most part this season, hasn't seen because they play at 10, 11 o'clock Eastern at night. So
yep.
Unless you're showing up to your boss the next day on 4 hours of sleep, you don't get to see the Mobley brothers play that often. You didn't see them this year that much. But I think they'll be able to defensively keep this at a lower scoring game than Gonzaga wants it to be. Gonzaga struggled early in the year versus West Virginia with West Virginia's size, and then they finished the game strong. I like every point that I can take in this game. USC, where they're evolving and what's so impressive is they're shooting the ball at such a really high rate right now. They weren't doing that during the conference season. And that's why I think they have a legitimate chance to make this a very close game. And it's going to be interesting because as good as Gonzaga is, and as much as they were battle tested early in the year, you're probably going to see them in a close game situation after the under 8 media timeout in the second half. That's something that they haven't experienced in a while. And muscle memory, we haven't done this in 3 months. I'm waiting to see how that plays out the last couple minutes of the game.
Yeah, the only real game Gonzaga's been in a while was that championship game against BYU, which BYU was up 12 at halftime. Gonzaga came storming back as I think most of us thought they would, and got that one. They might have even won that one by double digits. They won it pretty convincingly.
I think they won by 9.
9, yeah. So
Matt Harms for BYU missed 3 layups, which
there you go.
Surprised at. I hate to do it, but after the way he played at Purdue, it was pretty predictable that he was going to miss some layups. Like, I don't think USC is going to falter. If they're in a position like BYU was in that West Coast championship game, USC is not going to blow it the way that BYU did. There's a difference between Matt Harms and Evan Mobley. Big difference.
So that's where I'm going here. This is a different team. It's funny because BYU and USC are both 6 seeds in this tournament. So on paper, maybe they can appear the same, but this is going to be a different test from that BYU game. Gonzaga can't go down 12 at halftime in this game if they want to win this game. They can, like you said, you're taking USC with the points, so it can still be a game, and Gonzaga can show us they're the team that we all think they are, and pull away and win this game by 4, 5, 6, and make their Final Four appearance. But this is going to be the toughest test for Gonzaga. By far, I think, in this tournament, and by far in a long time. So I'm excited to watch the game. I'm terrified to take USC with the points, even though I think it's the right side. And I kind of like Baylor. I would be pretty shocked if Gonzaga actually lost this game. But I do expect it to be very competitive. Let me just say before we go on to the last game, or ask you before we go on to the last game. As we record, both Gonzaga and Baylor sit at minus 400 exactly on the money line. Which team would you be more surprised if they lost?
Baylor or Gonzaga?
Mm-hmm.
I'd be more surprised if Baylor lost, to be honest with you, because
that's what I was going to say too.
I think USC is a step above Arkansas. Yeah, it might be the unpopular choice, but I would be more surprised if Baylor loses to Arkansas.
No, I think that's the right answer, which, it's a little late to be getting in on futures on the 2 favorites. Mm-hmm. But like, if you're somebody that think USC has a good shot and feel Baylor's in as strong a position as we do, you can still get Baylor at like plus 250. Not that it's not, if they do see Gonzaga in that final game, all bets are off, but something to consider there if you're looking for some value. This last game, this UCLA run, I can't quite figure out where this came from. Like, Oregon State was, I don't think any of us had them in the Elite 8, but it's like, okay, there's a body of work there. Like, they turned things around at a certain point in the season, got through the end of conference play like that, had a great Pac-12 run, and then carried it into this tournament. And, you wrap your brain around that. I can't wrap my brain around where the UCLA turning point was, because there wasn't one. They were just kind of a meh team throughout the course of the season. They got knocked off immediately by the Beavers in the conference tournament. They play a very talented, although wildly inconsistent Michigan team in the first 4. And here they are creeping by teams. And Alabama screamed the end of the road to me for UCLA, and it was not. I have to keep sticking with my guns here. I think I'm maybe a little more confident than you in this game. I don't like UCLA. I'm tempted to lay the 7 with Michigan.
Me too.
It brings up another question of how much of that last game was Michigan asserting its dominance even without Isaiah Livers versus Florida State just being kind of this Jekyll and Hyde team and not necessarily showing up. The boring answer is it's probably a combination of both. Mm-hmm. But how do you see this game? Is UCLA actually for real? Do you put much weight behind the dominance over FSU? Because I'm talking myself into laying the 7 with Michigan.
I'm leaning towards laying it with Michigan too. The knock on UCLA this year was that they didn't have many shooters. They're actually shooting the ball a lot better in the
Lights
tournament.
out.
That said, though, Alabama lost that game last night. Alabama missed a ton of free throws. Herbert Jones misses 2 free throws that could have won the game right then and there. They don't close the door. Michigan's not going to let that happen. Florida State did not play well, and it was a combination of Michigan playing pretty well, Florida State not playing well. That said, though, I do think this tournament, they've risen up and played, and without Livers, they've done a really good job. And even without him, what this does, even if they didn't look great versus Florida State, it gives them another game of them having confidence. Look, they're not walking into this game versus UCLA and saying, "Oh, well, we might struggle with them." They just beat a team who's better than UCLA, who's significantly better than UCLA. So I think they're going to come in with a ton of confidence. They get that extra chemistry built by playing those 40 minutes together. I think they come in here in a really good spot. And UCLA dancing after the game yesterday. I mean, they didn't really earn this spot, in my opinion, before these 3 games. I don't want to take anything away. They didn't earn. They really didn't get over the hump. This might be the truth. There's 61% of tickets as of right now. I don't know how it'll settle up, but 61% of the tickets are on UCLA right now. I think Michigan's going to be the right side.
All right. I mean, if those tickets keep coming in on UCLA, I like Michigan even more. I don't know if we're going to get this at a better number or not, but I would be very intrigued by that. Michigan showed me a lot, I think, in that Florida State game. I couldn't believe I wound up on the Michigan money line at one point in time. It just kept shrinking, and I talked myself into Michigan. Worked out. I'm happy that people are sleeping on them, I guess. And like you said, like UCLA, I thought the last one was going to be, they just kind of peaked. You're coming into the second weekend, and that momentum is going to be gone, and it was still there. So I'll give them credit for that, but I would be very surprised if Michigan was not the end of the road for them. Any thoughts on totals or anything on these Elite Eight games before we move on? I'm not very interested.
I haven't handicapped the totals yet. I haven't played a single total in the tournament yet. It's been all sides.
Yeah.
There's gonna be value on a few unders. I haven't picked which one I'm playing yet though, but there's gonna be games that the possessions get a little tighter and the game slows down. We could have a good one tonight in Oregon State, Houston. That number already dropped 2 points, but the possessions are going to matter more and more as you get closer to the 5-minute mark, second half.
Yeah, I will say, as you would expect, Gonzaga is the highest on the board at 153.5 right now.
Yeah,
like you said, that's one where USC is going to D up and maybe limit some possessions because that's what you have to do against Gonzaga as the highest total on the board. That's kind of an interesting one. I doubt I'll be on any totals, but I think that's an interesting spot. Okay, before we wrap up, I probably know what you're going to say here, but give me your national championship game and who wins it and why.
I said Baylor could beat Gonzaga from earlier in the season because I think they have a better defense and I think they have the size. So I'm sticking with that. I think we get Baylor and Gonzaga, and I think Baylor, with everything last year and them being in a spot where they could have and should have made a run if the tournament went on, I think they carry that out and get the job done this year. It's gonna be a fun couple days leading up to it, though, man. I mean, there's
simple as that.
Moments played out, nothing is certain, and I'm not putting anything in ink for the national champion right now. I'm just playing game by game and seeing how it plays out and try to make some money along the way.
Yeah, no, agree with taking this just kind of step by step. That's so what I've been saying since this tournament started is I've been so confident that Gonzaga was going to make the national championship game because of their path on their side that, I have Gonzaga tickets at like plus 1,000 from before the season, but I've just been very confident that they're going to be in that game. So like in brackets or whatnot, I would put them in as the champion. But I was hoping we would get Baylor, Illinois on the other side, but we obviously are not going to get that. I've thought that the Baylor, Illinois winner is going to have a good shot in that national title game if one of them was there against Gonzaga. I just thought those two teams would have a tougher time getting there. And it looks like Baylor is going to be the one, hopefully, to kind of prevail. But I'm with you. I think that Baylor has a decent shot. If we get that game, I will not be leaving my Gonzaga tickets unhedged. I will certainly be doing some hedging because Baylor is that good of a team. All right, man. I know you've been cleaning up during the tournament. It's been going well for me as well. The Beavers obviously are very much to thank for that. So yeah, I mean, Oregon State on Monday night for you. You're on USC tomorrow night. I'm still terrified of that, but we'll come up with something later. Anything else you wanna add? And your Michigan lean as well. That's probably something that I'm gonna get down on soon enough.
Let's hit this Oregon State play tonight, and then move on and try to clean up on the rest of the board.
There you go. James Alberino, you can find him on Twitter at SpreadInvestor, spreadinvestor.com. Follow him. He will have plays. They've been doing very well. You can find me on Twitter at Julian Edlow, and we will try and continue to kill this tournament. We're finally getting down to it. And Final Four Saturday night, we will have another edition of the Unreasonable Odds podcast on Thursday, working on a guest for that and working on hopefully some DK Sportsbook giveaways for you guys to use on the Final Four on Saturday night. James, thank you for coming on, sir. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, man. We'll do it soon.